Hey, everybody, and welcome to the 9 to Side podcast, where we chat with super amazing and inspirational people who pounded the pavement before and after their 9 to 5s to get their side hustles off the ground. After listening to the interviews with these amazing guests, you'll walk away with a refreshed pep in your step and a newfound motivation to make your side hustle a reality. Hey, everybody, and welcome to Season 1, Episode 12. Hope everyone is doing well. I've been thinking a lot lately as I've kind of reflected back on the interviews that I've done and the ones that haven't even aired yet. And I've talked to so many super interesting, phenomenal, amazing people who have really impressive side hustles. And, this kind of theme has sort of come about where I don't know, not for all of them, but it just seems a good majority of the people that I talk to have always had some small seedling of their side hustle that has existed in their life from way early on, much earlier than they actually initially took action on it. It was just kind of always present in some way in their life. And they've gone their lives doing careers, 9 to 5s, or other things in their life. And it's taken them a while to kind of come around and then pursue the side hustle. But it does seem, in hearing a lot of these backstories, that passion was always there. So it got me kind of just wondering, what is it about, the way we're brought up, or society, or just the way schooling teaches us that sets us on certain paths in our career and maybe steers us away from pursuing some of those like innate passions earlier on? Because I do think that, you are programmed to go to school, go to college. There are easy to see career paths that end in certain jobs that are very clear cut, like being a doctor, being a nurse, being a lawyer. You go to certain schooling for that, and then you come out of that and you have all of the education that you need and credentials to get yourself that job, make good money and support yourself and live happily ever after. And so I think, a lot of times without thinking, especially when you're young and you're in college, you just kind of pick one of those career paths that seems to make sense and you follow it blindly until you realize one day that maybe that's not the thing that makes you the most happy. And I think a lot of times, creativity, the arts, some of the things that are a little less tangible, that don't have very clear-cut paths to them, sometimes don't get treated in the same way. So if you're going to school and you happen to be, a really good artist, or I don't know, you really like to draw or do something, unless you're phenomenally talented at that, I think a lot of people don't pursue that, because I don't think a lot of people will sit you down in school and talk to you about, all right, let's think of a practical business purpose for how you could incorporate your passion for art and make that work for you financially to earn a living. I just don't, at least back in the day when I was going to school, those kind of conversations weren't happening. So anyway, I was just something that I was thinking about. And my next guest, Angela Chu, who is amazing. I obviously think all my guests are amazing, but she's so brilliant and also so incredibly creative. I mean, she has it all. And so, she's kind of one of those typical people. I feel like she was raised to pick one of those traditional career paths, and she chose being a lawyer. But all along, and you'll hear in the background in her story, she's always had creativity and an inkling towards, different hobbies and various other things that she's been interested in. But law was always her path. She was really good at it. She obviously excelled in her career. She's working for a major company. So your 9 to 5 and your job where you're making money takes precedence over everything. So naturally, everything else was kind of a hobby. And I think it took somebody else in her life, her very supportive, amazing partner, to kind of bring it to her attention how talented she was at interior design, which is a passion of hers, but I don't think, and she'll talk about it, she ever thought that could be a realistic option for her in terms of something that she could turn into a business. And so I think her story is incredible. Her side hustle that she created is called Intent Designs. And I talked to her months ago because, as I mentioned, this took me so long to get off the ground. But she had a couple projects that were going. She started with references that she was working with. She was still working on getting her website up. I mean, it was so fresh. She was working nights and, still doing her day job. And then since our interview, she actually had gotten so much work, it became too much. And she went in to go resign to her company. And she's obviously so good at her job and they knew what she was doing that they asked her to stay on part-time, which is, I mean, the best of both worlds. And I think she's such an incredible example of taking something that was a thought, passion that far veered off the traditional career path, but she just went for it. And it's just taking off for her. And it's incredible. And I feel like the skies have opened for her, and talking to her is just so inspiring. I hope it will inspire other people as well who are potentially thinking about maybe completely shifting the idea of what they're doing in their 9-to-5 job for something that maybe they've always had a passion for but have never gone for. So without further ado, this is my interview with Angie Chu. I want to welcome Angie Chu, who is currently a corporate securities lawyer whose passion is interior design and has recently launched that as a side hustle and is starting to get into that. So I wanted to welcome you and have you come on and tell us a little bit about that and what you're doing now and how you're getting into that. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. So I'll just give you a quick intro just about me. I'm born and raised in Toronto, mom of a completely wild toddler. Like Alex said, I'm a corporate lawyer by training. So I practiced at a firm and at a tech company for a little over 10 years. And then eventually moved over more towards the business side. And so now over the last 3 or 4 years, I've mostly just been scoping and negotiating acquisitions in the tech space. And this year I have also launched my side hustle interior design business as well.
Oh, cool. So tell me about how you got into interior design, like how you found that passion. And was that always something you were interested in?
So I was definitely, my whole career, I knew that law was not my true passion. I kind of came from this very typical children of immigrants household where, you had the stereotypical choice of being a doctor or a lawyer, and I chose law. And so, I excelled at it, but I never loved it. And I had always been more interested in kind of the arts and things that were more creative, pick up a hobby here or there, obsess over it, and then put it down because I got too busy with my full-time job. And about 5 years ago, my partner suggested I try out interior design because he knew that I had an eye for design and he wanted me to have something in my life that I was very passionate about. Over the years, as we've moved from place to place, it's always been something that's been very fun for me. And, I'd create these spaces in our home that people would say oh, it looks like it's just out of a magazine. And it was always just really fun for me. And so that's how it kind of started. That's where the seed was planted. At first, when he suggested it, the idea seemed so far-fetched because I just had no formal training in it. And it just seemed so far away from the life that we knew as corporate lawyers. But I did eventually start taking design classes in Toronto. And that really confirmed my love and interest for interior design in general. And so it kind of snowballed from there. As I was thinking more about it, that path was interrupted a little bit with the birth of our daughter. So I kind of had to put a pause on it. And when I came back to work from being on mat leave, it just became so clear that all of my colleagues, they really loved what they did. And they really loved being in the tech space. And they would just talk about work with so much passion and excitement. And it just reinforced this thing that I knew for my whole life that I had never felt in my career. And I wanted to have that feeling. And so that was really the first time where I'm like, okay, I have to be serious about it now. It's something that I do really want to pursue. I'm just surrounded by all these people that are very passionate and I want to feel that way too. So my partner actually put me in touch with a very successful interior designer in Toronto who was formerly a chartered accountant. That was really great because we had a lot in common, both coming from the professional services world that was, just so different from the art world. And learning her story and her path that was super unconventional gave me, I think, the courage to do it for myself. And so after speaking with her, within like 2 or 3 months of having that call, I had incorporated a company, come up with a name, got a logo done, secured the web and like social handles, and had 3 projects on the go. And then a month after that, I started getting referrals. So it was actually a
Oh my
very,
gosh.
very long path because it actually kind of started 5 years ago. That it was very slow moving for a really, really, really long time. And then finally, I think when I got to the emotional place where I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to invest the time and energy, and I'm very, very motivated to do it. It actually started happening really, really fast. But
It's so incredible to me because I feel like too, when you're passionate about something, it starts to, I feel like regardless of what you're doing and how little time you have in your life to do it, you're so excited about it that it
yeah,
kind of all just comes together. What I think is interesting and what I'm curious to know is you said you always knew that what you were doing was not your true passion. You were interested in the arts and things like that, but it was your partner who kind of like was the one who presented, was like encouraged you to do interior designing. Had you thought about other things? Do you think it was always interior designing and he just kind of presented it to you in a way where you were like, oh, aha, like that's it? Were there other things that you think you could have gone into? Or are you like, this is it? That's what I was looking for. I just needed someone to kind of like present it to me in that way and say, this is the path. I was
yeah,
just curious.
yeah, that is a really good question because to be honest, I have had lots of artistic pursuits in my past that I have, for various lengths of time become like super absorbed in and been obsessed with for a while. Like I got really into weaving a few years ago and like just had like floor to ceilings full of like wool and was
Oh,
just
wow. Cool.
completely obsessed by it. But I think it was my partner. He has a very entrepreneurial mindset and a very like business focused mind. And so
Mhm.
I think he recognized that the interior design path, which is something that he recognized I had talented, but I think he was the one that married it with the fact that there's lots of other skills that I learned actually while being a lawyer that would make it a very viable business for me. And so I think it was kind of like both. There was the aspect of it that I felt fulfillment, like personal fulfillment in,
Mhm.
but also that if you're trying to be a little bit more realistic about like
Right.
what could actually be sustainable financially for you. So,
Right. Well, that's what
I
I
think,
think is such a good point too, because I was just like, you were weaving and doing all that. And I was just, it's not like he was like, all right, how can we make your weaving like a business reality? But I feel like what he did really well was, like you said, kind of take things that you're really good at, but like present it in a way that it's like, all right, here's what you could take all your sort of skill sets and something that you're really passionate about and make it into something that is a reality, which I think leads me to kind of my next question is a lot of people, I think, struggle with things that they're passionate about, but I think get very defeated about thinking that they're not realistic, or they kind of like go down the path and they're like, that would be fun, but they can't really see how it would work and be something that's like a realistic or viable business.
yeah,
And that if it's not a realistic or viable business, that maybe it's not worth pursuing, which is also not the case because it doesn't,
yeah,
it doesn't have to be something that you transition into a full-time career. It can be something that completely remains like a full-time hustle or a side hustle. But I think you kind of coming to the realization and moving. So I know it happened over a span of 5 years, but it seems like once all those pieces came together, it very quickly moved forward into the realization that could be a business, is very viable and has moved forward
yeah,
into something. So
yeah, for sure.
what would you recommend for people who are struggling? I mean, that's kind of part of my question too, is for people who are struggling, trying to find and define like what their side hustle might be, or how you can kind of like zone in on what that passion is and then turn it
Mm-hmm.
into something more viable.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that?
So I think that you should never underestimate the power of your network. I think one of the most encouraging things for me, and actually what kind of kicked my butt into gear a little bit, was speaking with somebody who I had a similar story as I did and was able to successfully turn that into a business. And so I think that it's very inspirational to find people who have, who have made it.
Mhm.
And I think that you don't always know who these people are going to be. Like, I was introduced to this interior designer through my partner, but it wasn't him who knew her. It was kind of like one of his contacts knew her. And so you kind of have to put it out into the ether, right? Like, I'm
Mhm.
thinking about doing this side business. These are the things that I think that I'm good at, what I can offer, even if you don't necessarily have an idea of what your exact offering is going to be. Putting it out into the world, you would be really surprised at who says, oh, you know what? This aspect of your idea, I know somebody who did something very similar. Let me put you in touch with them. Then you start talking to that person, and maybe it's not the exact same thing as what you had in mind, but they'll give you ideas and help you shape what your plan is for your side hustle. And, it's kind of like speaking to one person leads to speaking to another person, leads to speaking to another person. And so I think that getting a bit of a flavor of lots of different people's stories can help you really solidify what you think that you'd be good at, what you think would be a viable business, and also will inspire you to go out on your own because you'll talk to all these people who struggled and hustled and made it. So I think that the power of your network is just super strong, and just putting yourself out there and telling the world what you have on your mind or what your plans are, your goals are, is kind of how it all starts.
I love that advice because I think interviewing people and talking to people about their side hustles is all about inspiring other people, because I know whenever I've wanted to do things and hearing other people's stories, sort of sometimes it just helps you visualize, like you said, like what your path could be, like talking to somebody who is in a similar path, like, because I think sometimes it's very difficult to just sort of see the path forward. Like, you have an idea of what you want to do. And like you said, I think the tip about don't underestimate the power of your network, which is so true, because continuing to talk to people and sort of putting it out there, I think your partner did for you. Sometimes outside people are the best people at sort of telling you and putting the pieces together for what you're feeling. I find that a lot, because sometimes people will, they're like mirrors looking at you being like, this is what I see you as being really good at, and this is where I kind of see you going, and then kind of pushing you to the next step. That just keeps you motivated and moving forward, because it sort of validates what you're feeling, but gives you a little bit of direction.
For sure. And I think also too, speaking to people who have started a side hustle of their own, I think it also gives you a different picture of what your life could be. Because generally speaking, if you're kind of just doing your day job and you're surrounded by people who kind of think the same way as you do and maybe are a little bit more risk averse, and you think that that's what life is, and that is what life is for many people, but life is also different for many other people. So having a network where more people who have done side hustles, more people who've gone out on their own, more people who are a little bit more entrepreneurial, can give you an idea of what your life could look like. It doesn't have to look like, your typical 9 to 5 day job. Like, it can look like something else. And until you start meeting those people, it's going to be hard for you to see yourself in a different life.
Yeah, I think that's so true and well put. Because I think I was going to ask you also, like, how just taking this first step, and I know it's still the beginnings of your, this interior design side hustle business for you, but like how it's sort of changed your perspective on how you feel about yourself and what you think you can accomplish in the future. If that's made you feel more confident, kind of opened your eyes to being like, I don't know, a newfound sense of purpose and just confidence, basically. Because I've heard that from other people who, once they took that first step, they were just, I don't know, kind of broke down that initial door of feeling,
I think for sure it's even had some knock-on effects, even just in my day job, where I just feel more confident as like a business person or as a lawyer, or, kind of in just my typical job. I feel like I have accomplished a lot in my side hustle, and it's given me the confidence to be like, be able to kind of more fearlessly take on new challenges in my day job too. I think it changes a little bit of your perspective on how you see yourself and realizing that you are capable of so much more, that you have so much more to offer. Like in my case, that I have, this other very creative side, and that can have lots of positive effects in other aspects of your life as well.
Do you already feel happier and kind of more fulfilled just generally because you're satisfying that part of yourself?
Yeah, for sure.
That's so great. And so in terms of your side hustle, because I wanted to talk just a little bit about that too, your job. So you're in the process of, have you incorporated your business? Tell us the name of your business. Just tell us a little bit about it and kind of what you offer. Because it's just you. You don't have any employees right now, right?
No.
It's you.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about your business and what you do.
For sure. So the name of the company is Intent Designs, INTENT. And I kind of work on a full range of different types of design projects. So whether it's like a refresh or remedial work, if you started to put some pieces together and realize it doesn't all hang together, I can kind of help rejig a few things, or full scale renovations, doing like top to tail selections, helping with construction projects. So it's really full service. My main focus, and it's something that when I was thinking about the business model in general, is I really try to focus on transparency and efficiency and making the customer experience really seamless. I think a lot of the times in the design world, things can be a little opaque or intimidating. And so I'm trying to make it as accessible as possible and making it as fun and not stressful as possible.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I do think designers can sometimes, when you're working with designers, it can be sometimes intimidating. So how do you pick your projects right now? Is it mostly referral? You said did you have 3 projects you've already done?
I've got 3 projects, and it's mostly just from people. Actually, a lot of the interest so far has been from former colleagues. So just been chatting informally in my network about the side hustle that I wanted to start. And then they'd be like, oh, actually, I need to redo my bathroom and we're doing it this fall. And could you help with that? And so it kind of just started with there. And that's why I think too, like, especially in the design field, word of mouth is so important, and people being able to kind of trust your work is so important. And so it's kind of funny because like colleagues in a way are the perfect client, because if you've worked with them in your day job, they know that you're super organized, reliable, like you communicate really well, your work product is great. And so in a way, like, although it's not in the design context, like they have an idea already of what you're going to be like. Right. And so that has been super helpful. So yeah, it's actually mostly been in like our network of colleagues or ex-colleagues that I've gotten my first projects.
That's awesome. You're also like, advertising yourself. And so I feel like and so it's referral based, which is great. And so building your network. Are you working, for everybody that doesn't know, you're located in Canada and Toronto, or you said that in the beginning, will you take projects outside, or right now you're focused just in your kind of immediate area?
Yeah, I think for now, I'm just focusing on projects in Toronto, partly because like to do remote services can be a little bit tricky in terms of things like scale, and colors look so different on screens. And so I think that for now, I want to be able to walk before I can run. And so just doing projects in person where I can see everything live is where I want to start, and then eventually move into e-services.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you could eventually move into that area. And how did you come up with I love the name Intent. Was there something behind that? Did you?
Oh God,
I really like the name of that.
I struggled for days and days and days, actually weeks on it. And I would constantly bounce ideas off of my partner. I think that I wanted to choose a name that like reflected our, like the ethos, and being the whole idea around being intentional about your life and about where you live. For me, like function and practicality is really important. Like mom of small toddler means that you cannot have like an 800-pound concrete dining table in your kitchen, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's just things that, for me, design is about living in the space, first and foremost. Obviously, it needs to look beautiful, but like the whole concept of living in a functional space is really, really important. And I think design that's accessible in that way is really, really important. So that's kind of where the name comes from.
I love it. I really like it. That was one of the things that kind of stuck out to me. I really like the name of the business. Do you do mostly, is it residential? You're obviously
Yeah.
doing residential stuff. Okay.
I have actually one project just that I'm doing a tiny bit of work for this restaurant in the neighborhood, only because we passed by this restaurant a couple months ago and the food is amazing, but we
Oh, okay.
passed by it so many times thinking like, oh, it doesn't really look that appealing. And we had heard good things about it, but to be honest, like didn't really believe the reviews because it was so visually unappealing. And when we did finally go in there to try their food, we're like, oh my God, like your food has no correlation with like what your restaurant looks like. And so I've been working with them to just kick it up a notch and make it a little bit more reflective of
That's so
what they do
cool.
and what they offer. And so it's been totally different, like lots of different considerations in terms of drawing in clientele, and the purpose is different, but it's been really, really fun.
That is really cool. You're like, I will eat here again, but only if you change the decor.
Yeah,
Your
yeah,
food is
exactly.
amazing. The restaurant looks terrible. My other question is just how have you fit this? How have you found like balancing your side hustle with everything that you have with family, your daughter, your partner, your full-time job? Are you loving it so much because it is your passion that it's okay to balance now that you're taking on these projects? Are you doing it on the weekends? Like, how are you
Yeah.
balancing everything?
I mean, I think it's one thing that like you can't be naive about for sure. It's a lot. It's almost every night, working every night, every weekend, the time that you would normally have with your friends and your family or pursuing other hobbies just evaporates, especially in the early days when you're trying to get things up and running.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's exhausting. I'm sleeping a lot less. I think you can't be shy about that aspect of it. If you're going to keep the day job, there's a lot of like benefits of having that security there, but you also have to realize that there's only 24 hours in a day. And a lot of your time is going to be eaten up by getting this side hustle launched. So yeah, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's definitely, it's a struggle for sure to balance everything.
Mm-hmm.
But for me personally, it's been worth it because I have felt a level of fulfillment that I have actually never had
Oh,
in my entire career. And so that has been really, really rewarding. And at least for me right now, I feel like it's a trade-off that I'm willing to make.
so awesome. I love it because I feel like to find that it's so worth it. I feel like you get this other level of energy that I don't know pushes you through the hours that it takes, the extra hours because you are so passionate about it. So with this, obviously you're putting in a lot of work, extra work right now. Where do you see, the business in like 2, 3 years? Like, what do you hope for it? You obviously want to grow it. And would you like to see it become your full-time career? Or do you like the idea of having kind of the full-time job as the security and sort of maintaining this as a side business?
If I can prove that it's a financially viable business model and that I can make enough money basically for the lifestyle that we've chosen to lead, that would be great if I could turn into a full-time gig. It's something that I think will just take time to kind of prove out and test. So in two
Mhm.
to three years, if in 2 to 3 years, we talked again and I said, it's gone gangbusters and I would love to be out on my own for sure. Or if I kind of realize it's just, I can't make it work financially, then I think it'll stay a side hustle and it'll still fill a void in my life that I've always had.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. And who knows what it can kind of parlay into. I mean, look at all these people who maybe you'll have your own TV show when I talk to you in 2 or 3 years. Be amazing. I'm so glad I'm talking to you now. So before we go, lastly, are there any other, I thought your network tip was incredible and kind of taking the first step in doing that. Do you have any other tips for people who are, I know there are personally a lot of people in my life who've always been interested in interior design. And I think it's something that is, I think it is intimidating. I don't know why as an industry, because I don't know if it seems like there's always like a clear path to get into that. It does seem intimidating, right? Because other careers seem, there's more of like a logical sort of stepping stone. And I feel like, oh, so I'm just curious from, and maybe in a couple of years, you'll have more thoughts on this, but do you have any other tips or thoughts on people that are specifically interested in getting into interior design?
Yeah, I think that for people who aren't formally trained or didn't go to design school, can be really intimidating. But there's so much about interior design that is actually just a business like any other business, that a lot of people who've just been in the workforce generally have built a lot of these skills. And so you can't really discount your hyper organization skills or your communication skills, your planning, your ability to put together a timetable and follow up and make sure that everything runs smoothly. All of these things I learned being an M&A lawyer for over 10 years doing cross-border transactions. You wouldn't necessarily think that that's a logical step, but actually a lot of the base skills that you learn in running complex commercial transactions really do transfer over to the world of interior design, because while part of the job is making things look beautiful and making a space feel warm and welcoming, and there is a lot of it that requires you to run a design project like any other project. And I think that people who are nervous to get into that should really not discount those very, very important skills. Like when I was talking to the interior designer who was formerly a chartered accountant, she had been in the industry for 15 plus years, had grown her firm, had lots of design students come through her firm and gone out on their own and actually failed because they didn't have these really, really important business skills. I think definitely just don't sell yourself short, I guess, because what may appear daunting on the outside, in reality, if you did kind of a skills mapping, you may realize that the gap isn't as big as you think it is.
I love that. I think that's a really good point because that's great because I think a lot of people discount their skills in other areas because they're not specifically, design focused or something.
Yeah.
And so I do think there are a lot of skills that come from having experience in other areas, but I have known a lot of people who've been hesitant to do anything in this space because they're like, well, I didn't go to school for design or I didn't do this. So I think that is a really valuable point to make. It makes a lot of sense. So I'm really excited for you. I can't wait to watch your career. And I can't wait till you launch your website. So tell everybody what the name of your website is, where we can find you online, your Instagram account, anywhere else, and LinkedIn and so forth.
Yeah. So we're planning to do our professional photo shoots this fall. So our website and Instagram will probably be up in a few months. And our web domain is www.intentdesigns.ca. And the Insta handle is intentdesigns.ca as well. My email is just Angela@intentdesigns.ca.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
No
It was
problem.
Really great talking to you. And thanks for taking the time to do it.
Thank you for having me.